Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. One of the fights that I've circled, I think it's a live fight with a very live underdog, is James Kirkland's next fight, and it's against Carlos Molina. Now, if you look hard at Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.'s record, and I'm talking about the champion at 160 pounds, middleweight, you're going to see that earlier in his career, he actually fought a fighter who got a draw against him, right? That's the blemish on Chavez's record. His record is not perfect. The fighter who gave him that blemish is Carlos Molina. Let's go further. When the two fighters had a rematch, you'd be surprised to learn that even though Chavez was awarded the decision, it wasn't unanimous, right? That second fight was actually a majority decision. Carlos Molina doesn't get a lot of press. He's not a knockout puncher. He's not overly flashy. But in terms of the quality of the competition he's faced, think about it. And the timing of when he faced that competition. Think about it. He fights an unbeaten Chavez Jr., gives him a draw, right? He fights an unbeaten Erislandy Lara, who everyone is now talking about after Lara's fight against Paul Williams. But of course, he fought Molina before he fought Paul Williams, and he looked limited in that fight. I thought Lara was lucky to come away with the draw, and that was after I had predicted that Lara would win the fight, right? Then, of course, Molina fought Kermit Cintron, and all I can say is, Cintron, who did get stopped by Canelo, actually looked far more effective against Canelo. He landed some very hard punches against Canelo that he did not land, was unable to land against Carlos Molina, right? So Molina, who fights orthodox, is very elusive, even to skilled, technically gifted southpaws like Erislandy Lara, right? Molina moves just enough, right? He's not a runner. Rather, he's a technician who's a slick counterpuncher, and he moves just enough to throw fighters who need to set their feet off their game, right? You don't know where Molina is going to be. And quite frankly, to slow Molina down, you're going to have to do what Lara did, which in my opinion was to try to concentrate on Molina's body. He had to give up trying to land headshots on Molina because it's very difficult, and I mean very difficult, to hit Molina flush in the head, right? So Lara won some of the later rounds by literally focusing on Molina's body, slowing him down a little bit. But again, if you look at Molina's track record before he fought Lara, you'll see that Molina was still getting himself back into fighting shape because he had been out of the ring for several months, right? Well, now you have Molina back in boxing shape, right? He's returned to boxing. Apparently he had some disagreements with his promotional or managerial group and was out of the ring for a while, but now he's back in, and quite frankly, he's back among the elites. Now, I view Molina, who has head movement, who feints, who is slick, who you don't know where he's going to be, who can dart from right to left and left to right, who has a three-dimensional game going where, he can fight low. You're throwing punches at his head, he's bobbing and weaving, and then you realize he actually has his body lower than your body, even when you're the same size as him. Take a look at the Lara film, right? Now he's fighting a very predictable, very determined, but very predictable favorite in James Kirkland. And Kirkland is almost certain to be overvalued because of Kirkland's stunning victory in Mexico over Alfredo Angulo, right? Now compare and contrast the two fighters. Molina, I don't know where he's going to be in the ring, right? The one place you know he's not going to be is right in front of you, right? James Kirkland, you know he's going to be right in front of you, right? Molina, adaptive, reactive. In other words, if you hit Molina with the left hand early in the fight, and then you try to come back with that left hand later, good luck landing that, right? We're talking about a fighter who is figuring you out. He's a counterpuncher. He's a technician. So he's literally spending the early rounds reading you. Once he figures out your pattern, your algorithm, he's not going to fall into the same traps. Now contrast that with James Kirkland, where Ishida knocks Kirkland down 3 times in the first round. The second and third knockdowns are straight right hands. What does Kirkland do? He fights Alfredo Angulo. What happens? He gets hit with a straight right hand and dropped. In fact, if you go back further in Kirkland's career, you're going to see that Kirkland has been dropped by straight right hands. Kirkland is what I call an effort fighter, much more than a technician. He wills his way to victory. He's a hard-hitting southpaw. It's very hard to prepare for a southpaw who's aggressive, who's going to stand in front of you, who's going to try to take your head off. It's very hard to find sparring partners who fight that style, right? And Kirkland is going to try to pin you up on the ropes, just like he did Joel Julio. He's going to be coming from the opening bell. He's going to try to out-volume you. He's going to try to pin you on the ropes. Most of his punches are headshots. Exactly the kind of shots that Carlos Molina is so good at avoiding. Not only that, when you look at a Molina fight, it's interesting. Molina likes to keep it in the middle of the ring, right? He's not Adrian Broner. He's not Floyd Mayweather. He's not one of these guys who just is comfortable on the ropes and doesn't care if you're in front of him while he's on the ropes. He likes to keep it in the middle of the ring. Whereas Kirkland likes to pin you up against the ropes, right? You saw what he did to Alfredo Angulo once he turned that fight around. So, a lot of this fight is going to be determined on where the two guys are. If they're in the middle of the ring, I'm expecting James Kirkland to have as much trouble as Kermit Cintron had, right? Quite frankly, Cintron is a more advanced fighter than James Kirkland, right? And let me just put it this way. Carlos Molina pitched a near shutout against Kermit Cintron, right? More importantly, too, when James Kirkland comes in and tries to impose himself on you, right? Carlos Molina has a skill that Amir Khan needs to learn, right? Carlos Molina can tie you up. In other words, if you recall the Lamont Peterson-Amir Khan fight, Peterson comes in, has free hands, he's beating up Amir Khan inside, right? Khan didn't seem to know how to grab both of Peterson's hands, especially his right hand. Well, Carlos Molina clinches about as good as anyone in boxing. He's an excellent clincher, right? You come inside on Carlos Molina, he knows the sport. He can tie you up. Better yet, after he ties you up, he can turn you. So when the referee breaks you, Molina can then back away to the middle of the ring, right? He's not lingering around the ropes waiting for, some big guy to hit him with big shots. No, Molina, who doesn't have a lot of power, knows that he needs to be in the middle of the ring and that he can't allow a bigger guy to come in and beat him up. And let me also point out, too, that, in my opinion, Molina has a superior foot speed, right? And clearly, in my opinion, has a superior footwork. Let's talk about the difference. I consider foot speed just getting from here to there. I consider footwork to have your balance set up where you're operating on angles, right? You're off at the side. You're not tangled up in your feet or your opponent's feet. You're off at the side. You're able to hit your opponent and not be hit. You're able to then back out without getting hit and then rearrange yourself so you can be in an other position where you can throw punches, effective punches, get around your opponent's defense, right? And not have your opponent able to just throw a left hook or something and land flush on you. So I actually think Molina, the underdog, is a very live underdog in this fight. Let me go further. If this fight goes a distance, I expect Carlos Molina to win the fight. Now, since he's fighting James Kirkland, who is a guy with a very high knockout percentage, the bet I'm recommending is a straddle. I like Carlos Molina, the underdog, to win the fight, straddled against James Kirkland, the puncher, by knockout. That's how I see it. I think this fight is better than advertised. I'm a bit surprised that James Kirkland is so insistent on fighting real fights, fight after fight, right? He's just coming off a war against Alfredo Angulo, and of course here he is back in with Carlos Molina, a fighter who has beaten Cintron, who has gotten a draw with Chavez, who has gotten a draw with Erislandy Lara. That resume is among the best at 154 pounds. Molina's underrated. I like a straddle here. I like the underdog to win the fight, straddle against Kirkland by KO. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube and visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.